Hi YouTube. Today I want to talk about a topic that is very important to me. It's something that I have focused a lot when I was trying to figure out esports and how to be the best version of myself, and it ties back to the BART pill, which is my method to improve at static aiming and flicking. I want to talk about consistency. Specifically, I would like to talk about a topic which is very controversial for some reason, which is called muscle memory. So muscle memory is a thing that exists in neuroscience. I'm not an expert about it, but I think it is something related to, repetitions of your actions with your muscles, and then kind of these things becoming habits that are automatic to some degree. And I think something like brushing, like that's muscle memory. You're not actively thinking about the movement you're doing with your arm, stuff like that. So in the context of competitive gaming, muscle memory kind of became a big deal when Counter-Strike players noticed something, because all of these things were not researched, right? They all come from empirical analysis. So Counter-Strike players noticed one specific phenomenon, which is if you stop changing your sensitivity, you become more consistent. They noticed this phenomenon, many people independently noticed it, and then someone, who knows who, started calling it muscle memory, because the idea is that, it's muscle memory, you stop changing your sensitivity, and then you can rely on your muscle memory for aiming, and that's more stable, that's more consistent. And that was kind of the status quo. It was accepted as a truth, and the concept of not changing your sensitivity became a mainstream advice. Then, with the advent of aim trainers, people started playing around with it a little more, and they noticed that you can change your sensitivity and nothing's going to happen. At least in the context of an aim trainer, you change your sensitivity, and people even found it beneficial because it puts different stimuli, it causes different stimuli to your hand-eye coordination, and you learn to use different parts of your arm, wrist, finger, different types of aiming, and different types of precision versus speed can kind of be forced to be learned by playing with your sensitivity. So what happened is they noticed that they did this and nothing changed, and actually they probably improved, especially within aim trainers. And then they started saying muscle memory is a myth, muscle memory doesn't exist, change your sensitivity won't do much to you. Now, I think this is almost a problem of like discussing the semantics of the word muscle memory, which is definitely just kind of abused, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. I don't think there's like a universal truth to this, and there are no scientific papers about it, so we can't really know what the truth is, so we have to rely on just empirical things, which again, on one side, aim trainer people notice that they can change the sensitivity and still perform, and actually it's good for training. And Counter-Strike players and then Valorant players notice that if they stop changing their sensitivity all the time, they become more consistent. I think both of these things are true. I think that people should appreciate the nuances of these topics a little more than they do, and understand that just because you notice a correlation or a phenomenon, it doesn't mean that all other correlations that had been noticed before then are not true. It simply means that the topic is nuanced, humans are complicated beings, and you should try to figure out why people are saying something. Just assuming that people are dumb, or they don't understand, or that like everything is a psyop and they are all like it's all placebo is very reductive, and I think it's not gonna do us as a community any good, or it won't help us achieve any finding, or it won't really make us better. So I want to try to discuss the nuance of it. And again, all I can do is do it empirically and logically. I will try to reason about it. I would say in aim trainers, like when you are aim training, you can be very focused and relaxed on your movements. You can take your time to aim, and it's gonna help you. You'll be able to really think about your arm, your wrist, your fingers, and let's say that, in my opinion, minimizes whatever impact changing your sensitivity might have. Also, you're specifically aiming many targets or one target, but all the time. So it's kind of like more condensed. So yes, you change your sensitivity and you very quickly get used to it, so much so that even your flicks are sharp, even a new sensitivity, which seems to disprove the concept of muscle memory. I don't completely buy that. I think there's some degree of, yes, sure, but that's because you're actively controlling it. The moment you move on to the part of your brain that does things more automatically, let's say in a game where like an enemy pops up on screen and you're not expecting it, and you have to rely on like your instinctual aim, that will be a little bit affected. If you just change your sensitivity, you will probably overshoot if you have a higher sense than usual, or undershoot if you have a lower sense than your usual. So I think there's some nuance there, and some of it is due to the environment being different. And aim trainers basically, even when you're practicing a reflex scenario, which is basically a task where you have a limited amount of time to flick, still you know what to expect. You know what's going to happen. You know, you don't have that element of surprise that causes you to aim instinctually, or instinctively. So what happens is, in aim trainers, I think you're kind of muddying the water. And yes, you could see this correlation between changing sensitivity and like flicking not existing, but it might be due to the environment. And I'm not so sure that if you do that consistently in game, you won't see the opposite effect because of the higher degree of instinct being part of your aim. So I'm not saying that you change your sensitivity and your muscle memory is gone and you're gonna start being terrible at aiming. That's not true, because aiming is a complicated topic and there's a lot more to it than just this instinctual part of your aim. But I am saying that I do agree with the underlying correlation that was found by the Counter-Strike players originally, which is that yes, you will be less consistent if you change your sensitivity all the time. I found this myself. What I found as a correlation too, though, is that if you play a lot in a day, the effects, the negative effects of changing your sensitivity a lot are minimized. So, you know, I'm not saying, again, you can do it. I've had many successful teammates, and I found some notable pros that do change their sensitivity all the time, like tens. I would say, first of all, as always, please don't take the exception as the rule. It could just be that these people respond to changing sensitivity in a specific way that might not necessarily be for you or for the average person. So I do still highly recommend that you try different strategies for your own improvement, and don't take anything as a universal truth, because there's no such thing. None of this was studied, so you have to try it on yourself because you form an opinion. Don't form an opinion on the shoulders of others, not me either, right? Just take what I'm saying and use it as a way to be curious about it. Curiosity is really important. Don't accept the status quo when there's no science behind it, you know? I'm okay with accepting the status quo when like there's a corpus of peer-reviewed research. Then, you know, the status quo is probably right, and you probably don't need to go read, you know, 1,000 papers to prove that, I don't know, smoking is bad for you, right? Like, yeah, I haven't looked into it, but it's probably true that smoking is bad for you, you know? It's pretty well accepted. I'm sure there are meta reviews. This is kind of an academic approach, but that's the way you should approach status quos and things. So don't just accept that changing your sensitivity is bad, or it's good, or it won't do anything, or that you shouldn't change your sensitivity. What I'm saying is that I think, and I might be wrong, that on average, if you want to maximize your consistency, you should probably stick to one sensitivity in game. I think it won't be bad if you practice with different sensitivities. I think actually it could be good. I think it could improve your different ways of aiming, arm, wrist, fingers, different speeds versus precision, different levels of micro corrections. But in game, I think you're not doing yourself any favors by changing your sensitivity, especially because the reason most people change their sensitivity in game is because they tilt. Like, then you're just like, maybe you do better one round and you think it's because you changed sensitivity. No, it's just a normal like variance of, or maybe it's just a placebo because you were tilting and you changed something and now you think that solved your problems. But that's false. I think in the long run, it's gonna just cause you to be less consistent. And again, I think that this is the case based purely on my reasoning and empirical evidence. I don't have a research paper. I haven't taken 100 gamers and like done a proper controlled study. So, you know, just take it with a grain of salt. Go try yourself. But if you are the type of person that has taken the aim training truth that muscle memory doesn't exist and you can change your sensitivity all the time, and you're someone that like tilts and changes their sense all the time, not just in tactical shooters, but like in all games, shooters at least, try sticking to a sensitivity for a month. I would suggest go look at the distribution of sensitivities for pro players, and I would probably pick somewhere around the 35th percentile or so, which means 15 percentile points lower than the median sensitivity used by pros. Why? Because I think that you're not going to be playing as much as pros are. Probably. Maybe you are. But again, I've noticed this correlation where like you play more and you can withstand more changes and higher sensitivities too. And when you play less and you want to be consistent, I have noticed that it's easier to do so on a lower sense than average, not just in tactical shooters as you might expect. So I would say pick, the 35th percentile sensitivity from the pro distribution of sensitivities in whatever game you play. Stick to it for, a month if you're playing consistently. And then try to go back and measure your consistency. Maybe check your win percentage or your accuracy. Try to avoid things like headshot percentage. I think headshot percentage is a terrible metric, I'll be honest, because if I miss 1,000 shots and hit once, and that one hit is a headshot, that will count as 100% headshot percentage, but you still sucked. You missed 1,000 shots and hit once. So whenever you have a metric that is not a function of your total output, but can be kind of like maximized by not being good, because if I'm just going for one taps, scream style, and missing most of my shots, yeah, maybe I will have 100% headshot percentage or very high, but like I suck. I'm not being useful to a team. I'm missing on many kills I'm getting. So make sure you pick meaningful metrics like accuracy, total, number of shots on target, or like the advanced metrics in games. Like I think there's one called KAST from the Valorant tracker. ESEA used to have a metric that was like a little more nuanced than just these. So pick those, take the average over the month versus the month prior where you maybe were changing sensitivity, and tell me if you're more consistent. And if you can, don't just take the average, but take the standard deviation, because that's really consistency. Ideally you want an average that is higher, but if your standard deviation is lower, it means that you are closer to that baseline more often than not, which is good. Like that is what will make you level up. Because imagine that you were perfectly consistent. Okay, then this is very similar to the bar pill, by the way. Like if you've listened to me talk about the bar pill as a concept, this is the same concept. But imagine you're extremely consistent. You've lowered your standard deviation to almost zero. Then all it takes is for you to slightly increase your average to start leveling up until you hit a plateau of a rank. And then again, if you're perfectly consistent, you just need to slightly increase your average to go up in rank again or whatever other metric. So consistency is better because you're not all over the place and you can kind of focus on basics and actual improvement without all the noise that you will inherently get from the lower consistency of a higher sense or changing a sense. So again, I will say, give this a shot. Pick a game that you play for a month. Pick a sensitivity that is a little lower than average for pros. Stick to it for a month and report back. I'm very curious about it. I think most of you will find that your consistency has gone up, possibly even your peaks. And I am very, very curious to see what the results will be. Does this mean that muscle memory exists? I don't know. That doesn't mean anything. It's not a well-defined concept, When people are like, muscle memory doesn't exist, muscle memory exists. Well, it's an ill-defined thing, You're just abusing the semantics of a word. You're not gonna get anywhere. And people make this stuff their identity and then they don't get anywhere. Stop using these slogans and words. Appreciate the nuance of a topic and really try to understand the underlying truth. So I wish people stop arguing without any nuance. I don't want to start a whole thing about this, but I think that Twitter and other social media don't really help. I think it's a lot easier to get the dopamine hit if you are going for the extreme, and that won't do you any good. So please try this experiment. I think you will see some benefits. I think it means that there is some truth to consistent settings, and I'm curious to know what you guys think about the matter. I also hope you guys like the new 16:9 aspect ratio, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.